Okay, I'd like to call the special board meeting of the Marion Local Board of Education to order. We'd like to start with the pledge. The flag's over here. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Ryan, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Bruns?
Yes.
Mrs. Everman?
Yes.
Mr. Moeller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Rose?
Yes.
Next item, approval of the agenda. Could I please get a motion to approve the agenda? Motion by Phil Moeller,
Second.
second by Jesse Rose.
Mr. Bruns?
Yes.
Mrs. Everman?
Yes.
Mr. Moeller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Rose?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll get on with our meeting now. Just have our minutes. Okay, first of all, thank you everyone for coming. We had a community meeting here a couple months ago, and we had 90 people show up. And we at least quadrupled that number, and that's exactly what we were looking for. We wanted a huge turnout tonight, and we got it. Thank you. It shows you care. We appreciate that. I need to talk about three things tonight before we get into the main part of the presentation. The first is that everything tonight has been driven by the facilities task force. These are the people sprinkled throughout this side of the bleachers. They're wearing the yellow name tags. And we had to call for volunteers to see who would serve on this task force. Roughly 40 people volunteered. We didn't turn anybody away. And we're very thankful for what they've done. So they got together on 5 different occasions with the administration team and the board and Garmin Miller. And they have driven this whole project. We told them what we thought our needs were. We said, hey, we've got increasing enrollment, we've got aging facilities. How do we attack this? And between the task force members, Garner Miller, and our admin team, they did a great job. So I'm not saying this to blame anything on them if you don't like what you hear from me. But really what I'm doing is I'm giving credit. Because they gave of their time in the evenings and the weekends, and I can't thank them enough. Along those lines, anything you hear tonight is still in the form of a proposal. The Board of Education has not voted on a single thing regarding this proposal. We haven't made any concrete decisions, and that's because we wanted to have this last community meeting. We wanted a crowd like this so we could get feedback. So thanks again for coming. It's going to be invaluable to the process. Item number 2, the Ohio Auditor of State, who is Keith Faber from Salina, has really been cracking down lately on school districts. And by cracking down, they're really making sure that administrators and boards of school districts do not advocate for any school levies. We are not allowed to sit here and say, you should vote for this. We simply can't do it. They have prosecuted members of the Bellbrook Board of Education and some Bellbrook administrators, criminally prosecuted them because they use some school funds to help advocate for a levy. I mention that only because you're not going to hear Mike Coleman, Amy Reinke, or any board member advocate for this levy. It doesn't mean we don't want to or we do want to, we just can't do it. So I want to make sure everyone understood why that's the case. You're going to get facts from us, from the board, from Garner Miller, from our admin team. Facts only. You make up your own minds. Now, out of this whole process, there may end up being a levy committee. There may be an anti-levy committee. Anything that springs out of that is going to be independent of the school. I want to make that clear. We will have no part of it as school board members and administrators. Item number 3. This is the most asked question regarding this whole thing. Is there any state funding available for this project? It's an easy answer, but it's not a good answer. The answer is no. Marion Local used funding back in 1999 for the Commons, art and science classrooms, cafeteria, the central office, and 2 kindergarten rooms. We used OFCC, that's the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission money back then in '99. That project closed out in 2002. Even if we wanted to get in line for more funding, there is no line. The OFCC has, I don't want to say they quit, but they strongly curtail any new state funds for building. So I want to get that out there. State funds are not an option. We've double and triple checked. So those are the three things I want to talk about. We are now going to kick off the meeting. Garmin Miller is going to lead this, and Doug Brent's here from Garmin Miller will take over next. Thank you once again.
I just want to echo Randy's comments. We do this throughout the state, and there are times Matt and Monica we show up and we have 5 or 6 people at a community meeting. So seeing this gym packed tonight is awesome. So tonight, as Randy said, I'm Doug Brent from the planning team. With me tonight from Garmin Miller, we are a K-12 architecture and planning firm out of Minster. Matt Hicker is our Director of Architecture and member of our board. Monica Bruwall is our lead planner. And some of you may know our creative leader, Jamie Toby, a proud Mary local Kellen and Ryan are also here with us. Any site questions Kellen can handle, and then on the architecture and design, Ryan and I can. Here also tonight, in addition to Randy, you are going to hear from Marion local administrators, and we have some task force members with us in the front here that you're going to hear from. Michael Burns, there he is. Mike covers an area that, like, I'm a communications major, so I'm going to leave the map to him. From Barrett Financial, he will walk you through the funding and cost options tonight. All right, let's look at the agenda. Why are we here? There are challenges that the facilities have, and those challenges are impacting some pretty significant spaces. So we need to share with you tonight what's happening. Our master planning process, Monica will walk you through that. It's already kind of on display here tonight. She'll kind of walk through just our approach, how it has to be open and transparent. I'll walk you through how the chain of communication from the board, the task force, and you as the community. We're going to look at the design choice and the associated cost, and the financial plan that Michael will lead you through. We talked about levy. We're going to look at a potential bond time frame, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end. Do you all see exit tickets in your rows? Do we have them, Jane?
They were on the seats.
On the seats? Okay. Those exit tickets, if you have a question that we don't have time for tonight, or you may not want to bring up in front of the group, please use that. We will collect them at the end. So we'll do our best to get either the district or Garmin Miller will get an answer back to you. But definitely hold on to those tickets, because if you do have a good question and we just simply run out of time tonight, write it down and we'll get back to you. All right, why are we here? Bring up our superintendent.
Okay, number one reason why we're here is, let's face it, increased enrollment. We spent a lot of time in our newsletters and just board meetings discussing this, so I think everyone in the community is really well aware of our increased enrollment that we're seeing. Later on, we'll have a handout for you that kind of shows some of the, we have 101 students in first grade right now, and then we're projecting enrollment through a lot of our baptism numbers and work with our area 3 schools, so we'll be able to show that. Classroom utilization with the increased enrollment, we'll need more classrooms and just the space that it takes. Gymnasium space scheduling. If you ever want to have an interesting conversation on how much our gymnasiums are being used, fine day gaming. Cafeteria meal scheduling. With increased enrollment, you'll notice the elementary cafeteria is limited for space. We have 3 lunch periods in there. They're very crowded and they will become more crowded. Special ed needs and whole child focus. As you're aware, and just meeting the needs of the whole child. It just takes a lot of space and classrooms also. And then finally, our aging infrastructure and building maintenance needs. You know, Cooch and I work every day on that, and you know, definitely have needs that we'll talk about. And then, just going along with the previous slide, the space is impacted by the challenges, classrooms, and you'll see this later on when Matt Linder comes up to do the design. The Career Tech and VOAG, cafeteria and food services that you'll see in the plan. Administration spaces. So you've noticed Mr. Bruns talked about the administrative offices were new in the 2002 project. They are very adequate in my office, but if there's a new facility, there needs to be an administrator and a secretarial staff that are in that facility, and then you'll find out later on, in another slide, we'll talk about maybe how we can repurpose the central office at the elementary. Gymnasium space, and of course, if you're going to have a gymnasium space, you're going to need a commons for people, and then of course locker rooms. So, Mr. Wilker.
So when we figured out all of this increasing enrollment, what I did was start to look, what's the building going to look like as time moves throughout the next several years. So I kind of laid the building out grade level wise, took the number of the kids we had in each of these grade levels, and kind of just spaced it out each year. And what's starting to happen is, you know, those classes right now that are at 101 in first grade, you know, at 80 in third grade, they're starting to push their way up into middle school section. So as they start creeping into that middle school section, we need some room for those middle school classes to go. So for example, next year we're going to have 2 fourth grade classes in classrooms that were traditionally 7th to 8th grade. So this is kind of where we're seeing our need coming by, you know, these, and as these classes are, you know, not seeing a downward trend, you know, at least any time in the near future based on our baptism and preschool numbers, we know that we're going to need to keep these 4 and 5 section classes down in primary yet too.
Thank you. So as Mr. Coleman talked about some of the challenges, when we look at master plan, we have 4 guiding principles. The first is that it's open and community-driven process. That tonight, check, right? We have community here to be participating and to get your feedback. But throughout, since we started back in August or so, we've been trying to be open with the task force and the administration meeting and sharing information. Emphasis on transparency and accuracy. We want to do it right, the district wants to do it right, and we want to make it a long-lasting solution for the district. No predetermined outcomes. I know everyone might think, oh, I know what's best for the district, but I think if you were to talk to some of the task force members, they would say that their minds were changed and you start learning all the pieces and parts of the information and sharing that dialogue. And in other districts, we found that the solution from a group is so much better and richer than just what you're coming to in one meeting. And so the time and effort that's been put in has really helped. So no predetermined outcomes. And then what we've called this process, it's called It's For You, because it's for you and your students and your community and the students to follow. And it's by you. You and all of the task force members and administration, you've been working through this and chewing it up, spitting it out, transforming it, so it's for you, by you. I'm not going to be here, participating in this community, but you are, and that's why it's so important that you're involved. And those are our guiding principles. Mr. Coleman's going to talk a little bit more about our task force.
As Mr. Bruns started out the meeting, just extremely happy with our task force and the work they've done. So what we did is earlier this year, we put out a call for task force members, and we had about 40 volunteers come up. And anyone who volunteered, the answer was yes. And so right at first we thought, hey, maybe a couple meetings. It ended up being 5, and this is our second community meeting. So just to give everyone in the crowd kind of an opportunity, if you served on the task force and volunteered, would you just please stand for a little bit? This will give all of you the opportunity. By far, this is the best community group that I've ever been involved with in the collaboration. We just had a very diverse group, represent everyone, and just extremely happy with just the ownership that they took of the responsibility of representing all of you. And tonight, hopefully, we'll get a real good glimpse of their vision. And their work sort of matches up with yours, so thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Monica already touched on this with the open and community-driven process, but real quick, the communication flow in the master planning process that is for you and by you happens from the Board of Education, the Facilities Task Force, and the community. But do not trick your eye thinking that's hierarchy. You see those arrows on the right and the left going up from the community? And if anyone was with us in October, who was here at the first community meeting? Good. Glad you guys are back. We established priorities that day that the task force used in all the different options that were developed and where we landed. So it's key. If we were to take those arrows going up on the community, it's no longer open, there's no longer buy-in, it's just running top down. And that's not what for you and by you is. Where have we been? We started this process back in August. A lot has happened since then. We've had another state championship. We turned over the calendar. Community meeting 1 was October 30th. You can see we've had 5 task force meetings with another one to come, because what we hear tonight, we'll want to take that and assess it and report back out. So that'll take place next month. Leads us last month in February and then here tonight. We're going to walk through and give you guys a quick glimpse at the task force meetings and summarize them for you. So kind of like walking through the journey. Monica will start that for us.
So as Doug mentioned, Task Force 1 was August, and we reviewed the master planning process, talked about the guiding principles, wanted to make sure everybody else was on board with the flow and how we handle things. We talked about the district challenges. You can't talk about a solution without knowing the problems. We were really candid with that information. And then we asked the task force members to talk about the hopes and fears for the project. We wanted to understand what they wanted to get out of this. Again, not from the predetermined piece, but what did they want to see the solution to bring in these large, abstract, think big type goals. And so tonight we asked 2 task force members, Haley and Allison, to come forward and share some of the results from that, their takeaway.
Just a quick little introduction here on who we are. My name is Allison Moeller. My maiden name was Bruce. Carrie and Shelley are my parents. I was a 2010 Mary Local graduate. My husband Marcus is a 2009 graduate, and his parents are Mike and Missy. We have 3 children, and our oldest is going to be in kindergarten next year. So I grew up here in Maria Stein, left to go to college, and then I knew that I wanted to come back here to raise my future children.
My name is Haley Flett. My name is Schaefer. My parents are Mark and Joan. I graduated from Marion Local in 2011. I married Justin Flett, who is the son of Johnny and Linda Flett, and he graduated from Marion Local in 2008. I always felt blessed growing up in this community, and I feel very hopeful that I get to continue that with my children. I have 3 children, and my oldest son, Jackson, is currently a kindergartner.
So back in August was the first task force meeting, and at that meeting, Gardner Mellon first asked us all to individually write down our top 3 hopes, our top 3 fears for going forward in this facilities process.
As you can see, the number one hope for the future was to maintain high academic achievement while also keeping in consideration the learning environment for our children. Underneath that, the next ranking highest hope amongst the task force members was to keep the community involved. And in the process of the future facility planning, the hope is to feel as though there is majority consensus in moving forward.
The next highest hope was to maintain growing enrollment in a strong district. As you can see from all the new housing that's going up and the enrollment numbers that we see increasing, people are wanting to come back here to raise their children, and we want to keep that a trend moving forward in the future. Another high hope here is the more classrooms in order to help keep that low student-teacher ratio. We're aiming for 1 to around 20 students, so 1 teacher to about 20 students per classroom. And you can see all the other results here of the hopes that we all individually came up with, and these were all kept in consideration throughout the whole process. Kaylee's now going to touch on the fears.
So overall, once everyone voted on their fears or wrote down their fears, and please remember these are individual. This was not small group, so everybody had their option to say if they didn't feel comfortable saying it around others. The number one fear is that the district will continue to do short-term planning versus planning for facilities that can be sustainable long-term. More specifically, we don't want to keep doing Band-Aids on existing facilities that don't accommodate for long-term changes and/or needs. The next highest ranking fear was not reaching a community consensus, which if you remember from the previous slide, one of the highest hopes was to reach a community consensus in moving forward with the facility plan.
Obviously, another fear is the cost of this project. As Randy pointed out, we do not have any state funding available, so we want to make sure that we are ensuring economic feasibility here with responsible planning. Another top fear is there is no plan for future growth. Essentially, we don't want to be in the same situation that we're currently at another 5, 10 years down the road and keep running out of space. After we did all of our individual hopes and fears, we then broke into small groups of around 4 to 5 people. We went over our individual thoughts, and then we were asked to prioritize as a small group, what do we want to see in this facility?
After breaking down into the small groups, one of the most important priorities when considering a new facility was including more classrooms that allow for keeping a low teacher-to-student ratio of approximately 1 teacher to 20 students. The next priority was including multi-purpose space to allow for flexibility of use, so that moving forward they can accommodate any future needs that might come up within the school district.
Another high priority that the groups came up with was maintaining the availability of extracurricular activities. We want to make sure that we have the space available so that any student that wants to participate has the opportunity to do so. And also having a dedicated space for our ag and career tech programs in order to ensure that those students can have an impactful learning environment.
So in summary, this task force meeting was conducted with the first task force meeting was conducted with the goal of obtaining the task force members' hopes, fears, and priorities for the school board and for Gardner Miller to better understand the Marion local community when moving forward with the design process. And from here, Monica will go over the second task force meeting. Thank you.
We did a great job. So what we did, as they mentioned, we took the priorities and we decided to have another task force meeting because we weren't ready to bring this information to the community. And so at that meeting, we kind of shared additional information, more details about OSCC funding or lack thereof. Talked about the facility assessments, the work that would need to be done in the existing buildings and the renovations. Talked about, we learned some more information about the high school usage. As we learned questions from the first meeting, we answered a lot of those questions in in the presentation, as well as learned a little bit more about debt limitations. But the activity that they did was this small group activity, which is priority rankings. So they had the priorities on sheets of paper, and if you were here at the last community meeting, you'll know what I'm talking about. And they went around and they put a little garage sale sticker, a $5 sticker, 3, 2, 1, and 50 cents. And they got to vote what was most important to them, what was their top priority. And then there was a lot of analysis of which sheet had the most money, which one had the most $5, and so on. So that's how they did that activity. There was a second activity. Thank you. So we said, hey, let's put the architect pen in your hand. How did you work on this site? You know what some of the needs are, but here's an aerial of your site, and you cut out little blocks of shapes of a new building, or an addition, or an ag lab, or whatever, performing arts studio, whatever. And how would you put that on this site within the confines of what you have? And so a lot of different tables had a lot of different ideas. Some were similar, some were cutting out their little pieces and putting them here and there. It was a really good activity to show, let's work together and come up with a solution. And so that was an interesting activity for the group. And now it's Kevin. I knew it wasn't me.
Not sure I'm going to be as good as the ladies were in children. So, I'm Kevin Oddie, for everybody that doesn't know. I'm a 96 graduate, 5 children in the district. The youngest is a second grader, the oldest is yes, Peyton is my son, if anybody's questioning that. So as far as the task force member, just to let everybody know, I agreed to be on it. I'm glad I didn't turn anybody away. Mike would have said no, you can't promise it. But maybe a unique perspective, being a business owner, being a coach, being a father of children, and being from a farm background. Parents are farmers, relation is farmers, so I had maybe that unique perspective of kind of all those. So I thought I could give something back, right, and talk about it. So being on the task force, we really had to come up with a consensus of something that was long-term. That's why we did the master plan. It's not something, hey, we need a building, and then like the lady said, 5-10 years from now, we need something else. We need to add on. So master plan is, what do we need now? So we have to take that into consideration when evaluating the facility. It's not possible to build a new K-12 building at this point in time. We know that. The task force facility knew that. But what do we need now? So that's why we came up with the master plan. We're going to put like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, kind of build everything together. Middle school, high school, elementary, kind of how we're going to tie it together. Then we noted that we can't continue to take a Band-Aid. And I'll just say, being involved with the school, kind of behind the scenes, being a coach, I see the Band-Aid effect a lot. When we have freshmen coming from the locker room, that used to be the high school basketball locker room, Thursday evenings they got to dress in the shower of the varsity football locker room while volleyball has a game. That's just not feasible and long-term. We can't keep doing that year after year after year with our kids. So we can't take that Band-Aid approach. So we need to make some improvements, and again, that's why we came together as a group and decided what we want to propose.
You guys are around the closet. All right, so PPP one, that was 4 months ago. I looked it up, 127 days, at October 30th. So we shared a lot of this information with you. We shared the planning process, the challenges, facility assessment, all that stuff, kind of reformulated it for you, summarized it, and then we had you do that similar priority ranking. Maybe the garage sale stickers that you walk around, and let's talk a little bit about some of those results. Because we compared your priorities, top priorities, with the task force. And you can see blue is the community. It's a percentage based on the number of stickers on the chart, because the dollar amounts would have been the same since there are so many more people than the task force. And the task force is the goal. So the first one that's the highest for both groups is the more classrooms. More stickers are on the more classrooms than any other. Gym space came in second, ag, career tech came in third, and then the fourth was multi-purpose space. So there was consensus on the top 4 priorities of what needs to be addressed in this master plan. And if you remember from our lady speaking, consensus was something that the task force was after, and they wanted to make sure that that was, a deal breaker. We needed to have consensus and community buy-in. So that really tells us a lot in those priorities. Matt's going to talk through some of the other meetings as well.
All right, good evening. Thanks again for being here. This is just an incredible crowd. I'd say I've been to, I don't know how many community meetings over the state, and this is by far the largest crowd. So just compliment your community for being here, being a part of this process, and really doing your homework and understanding everything. So thank you. Just wanted to dive in. So the task force meeting 3, it was really important for us to really evaluate that. The priorities, like Monica had mentioned, the ladies have mentioned before, really making sure that what we were putting out there was going to hit all those marks. And then also looking at that site master planning process and really evaluating for the long term. Again, we didn't want to do Band-Aids. We wanted to make sure that whatever was designed not only accounted for the immediate needs, but the long-term needs. And so looking at this overall site and evaluating the best location, we put together 3 different options, and they were blue, gold, and white, just based on your school colors. We went through them in great detail that night, really evaluating them, evaluating the pros and cons, and we also looked at the overall design costs, because as it's important, from the beginnings of establishing those priorities, cost was an important factor that needs to be considered. So with that, I'm going to ask Kevin, if you mind coming back up and just kind of sharing the overall comments.
So this was a very unique part of the process. One, because being a part of the task force, everybody has a different personality, right? I'm a camel. Everybody ever did the four personalities, camel, turtle, monkey, and somebody knows the other one, I'm not sure. But I'm a camel, so it's detail-oriented processes. I'm not a monkey where I have 42 different things going in my mind and I can't keep track of one, it's bottled up. And I'm not necessarily a turtle where it's just slow paced, okay? So this part, I loved it, right? I loved it because we got to start putting pieces together, right? So between the 3 different options, okay, what are the needs? You have to go through the needs, we had the priorities, and pretty much Government Builder did a great job of providing 3 different options. And by consensus, we chose option gold was the best use of the campus, where the building said, how things are going to be situated. The other options, good, but either too costly or too invasive. Meaning invasive, meaning taking some athletic fields away in the short term that they had to be, reevaluated somewhere else in the long term, and just it wouldn't fit necessarily to the campus structure. So we confirmed through the football stadium needs could be done separately. There are some needs, and that may be a question tonight, but yes, there are some needs. But as a group, we've decided that could be done on the side, not part of this phase 1. So if there's questions about restrooms and concessions and stuff, that's not necessarily part of this phase. So make sure everybody's aware of that. And then the committee asked our to develop a series of sub-options. We like gold, but we wanted more. Right? We just don't say, hey, thanks guys, with gold, let's go with it. No, we wanted to make it work a little bit. Right? So they came back with us for different options of gold, so different tiers of cost too. Because that's the brass tacks right there, right? Does it meet the needs? And how much is that thing going to cost? Okay, so they came back with us some different options for gold, and then also the different cost tiers for the construction.
All right, so task force meeting 4. We came back after the holidays in January, and we revisited the gold original option, but we also made some revisions and tweaks to that, and then developed 3 other ones: gold A, gold B, and gold C, all with different tiers of cost. Really, we wanted to evaluate all those different options based on, once again, those priorities. So as we put that together, we actually created a summary matrix, and we evaluated all of them as we moved ahead. You can just see some of these pictures. Everybody's working together.
in small groups. We're trying to get some feedback. We're reporting out of small groups, what are the pros, what are the cons. But then, like I said, we developed a summary matrix, and this was kind of what we reviewed. So you have the 4 different options based on the columns that you see up at the top, the associated square footage with them, and then the cost associated with that. And then we also looked at all those important factors that we wanted to evaluate. And I know you can't read all this information tonight, but really it was intended just to, as an evaluation purpose, between all those different options. What are you getting? What are you not getting? And it was very interesting that Gold C, and I know this was the least amount of square footage, which would mean also the least amount of cost. There was a consensus that was just not going to work. That was too much of a band-aid moving ahead. So, Kevin, I'll ask you to come back up and give a little bit of a summary again.
Yeah, so like Matt said, it was really easy. They did their due diligence, government limited, brought us back to those four different options. The first option on the left-hand side, you don't have to go through that because, like I said, it's a pretty hefty slide. But it was the original package that they had. So we had original to base off of, then we had A, B, and C. C was pretty much thrown out the window. I mean, it was consensus, hands down. They gave us a sheet. Which one you like best, which one you like worse. C was, get it out of here. I mean, yeah, it was the cheapest model, but everything was stripped down to a point where we're really not even meeting our needs at that point. So we got rid of C pretty good. We also emphasized the need for complete career technical ag. The one, I think B, was a stripped down version of the career technical ag area, so just one kind of combined classroom, one workspace. Yes, it decreased the square footage and decreased the cost a little bit, but it minimized the ability for that student to utilize properly in that space. So that's why we kind of leaned a little bit away from B to that option A. So as a consensus, I think we decided from that meeting to go with option A, essentially go with option A. They came back again, which we'll talk about, to give us some other ideas. So we also evaluated financing options, and we essentially came up to, and we'll discuss further, obviously that's why I'm not here for the cost. Came up with a combined property tax and income tax put on levy that would best serve the community.
All right, so finally we came back last month in February, and we took all those different comments again. We tried to take all the pros of option A, also B, combine them, and we came up with this proposed design option that we're going to be sharing here tonight. I think it really effectively accounts for everything that was important from the majority. We also reviewed the costs associated with that along with the financing. So Michael Burns is going to be coming up here in a minute. He's going to be sharing some in-depth information. He really provides a high level of expertise on just understanding the finances. So we provide the cost to build and put the building up, but then really it comes down to how we finance it. That's his expertise. We also talked about the ballot time frame, and we started to prepare for this meeting just to make sure that we're putting the information out as best and clear as we can to you. So with that, if you could go to the next slide. All right, so we're going to jump into the proposed design option here. If you could go ahead. So this is the gold option, the original gold. In terms of the location, you can see that the proposed building in gold there is south of the existing elementary school. It does connect. That was an important safety and security feature that we wanted to consider. It is north of the existing baseball field there. And what the nice thing about this, it does account for future growth in multiple phases. So, like I said, it does allow for future expansion, out this way to the west, and maybe potentially long-term down to the east. Now, we know that will get into a future ball field, but just something that, we're going to keep it in the back of our mind. We want to, again, plan for the long term and the future. So we're accounting for that growth as best we can at this time. So the overall plan here, again, I talked about a connector to the existing building, the elementary building here. how we looked at potential phasing options down the road. So this is where we could potentially do a future high school, future elementary school, working around the existing site constraints that we have. And then, depending on when and how these different options are phased accordingly, or how the demolition, the potential demolition of the existing building starts to occur, all those details are being factored in and considered as well. So the overall plan here, as I mentioned, the overall connector to the existing elementary building on the south wing there. We have our main entrance right here. You come in, this is a large commons and student dining area. This is fit out to be for K through 8. So this is an opportunity to improve the entire food service area as well as the seating down into here. That gives us the ability to potentially modify and renovate some of that existing space down the road, giving new feature space for potential academic instruction down there. Immediately entering into the building, you get into the administrative office area. We also have the academic classrooms, special education, and so forth, as well as science up here. Food service is kind of back here on the west side of the building with access to the exterior and that connection over to the student dining area. And then where we ended up in this proposed design was a 2-court gymnasium, so there was a lot of debate. 2-court versus 3-court. 3-court you gain that extra basketball court for practice, but you lose a lot of that game field. Having games in this facility right here, very intimate setting. We really, the group did not want to lose that through this design. So this is designed to have actually bleachers on all 4 sides, really get the overall spectator experience down on the floor, and hopefully intimidate the visitors. Over here in red, we have locker rooms and coaches' offices that are adjacent to the gymnasium. And then this space over here is the career technology and industrial arts wing. And that was really important from the group to make sure that we did not compromise on that space entirely. We really wanted to make sure that that was held true with the associated classrooms and lab spaces that are really important to this community. And so that kind of, and I should also point out, this area right here is a greenhouse that's associated with that industrial arts and education area. And then in gray, you see just littered throughout, those are like your mechanical rooms, your electrical rooms, your large group restrooms, storage rooms, and those sort of spaces. So, yeah, and what we did again is we provided this matrix and this comparison tool to help everybody understand, okay, we had original, we had A, we had B, we had C, here's this latest proposed design option, how many classrooms, what the gym configurations were, the career technology, what was all comprised of that, and on and on down the list. So once again, I want to make sure that all that information was out there, was clear, as they were looking to make suggestions to you here tonight. So with that, Kevin, I'll turn it over to you again.
So after all that, we had to come to a consensus that the lab place was design mesh with the district needs. And you'll notice that if you can see people out in front, the proposed design was similar price to the option A, but there's some things in B that we used in A and vice versa. So if they did their darndest to put it together, I think matches what we need, right? Gym space, career tech, classrooms, administrative. If you see that, it's on point, okay? It's on point. So we come with that, that's long-term plan for the community. Like I said, we don't want to do Band-Aids. We don't want to do Band-Aids or piecemeal stuff together. We want something that we can be proud of, that we can show the surrounding communities when people come for sporting events, arts festivals, whatever it may be, that we're proud of the facility that we put together. As a community, we voted on, we put the due diligence in to come up with this proposed design. So, confirm the consensus, let's go to my property tax and income tax to make it fair and equitable for all members of the community. We got such a diverse community, right? We just don't have 100% business, we don't have 100% ag, we gotta mix it all, right? So we have to be fair and equitable at all. So as far as the consensus, and we went around the room, multiple times, people raised their hands, had questions on different things, what would be best, so that was our, kind of our recommendation from out that task force to have that combined, levy potential. And also suggested length of the property tax, should be 30 years, not 37. Michael can speak later on that, the differences between the two. 37 you start to stretch out, as far as how long you're paying on it, versus 30 years, it's a shorter game to recoup your costs essentially. So that's kind of where we stand after that last task force meeting, and now it's into the brass tacks, I guess, if you would.
All right. So the proposed design option cost ratio, that's what we want to talk about here. So how we put these budgets together, we're really at this point, just very high level square footage, adjacency diagram purposes, and how we're putting this together. We do not have a building design, so to speak, in terms of what the elevations are going to look like or anything like that. What you see is where the design is at this point in time. And so we're using square foot numbers to historical averages across the state of Ohio in order to put these numbers together and give you the best possible cost that we can at this point in time. So you can see up here we have under phase one, the new building of 63,580 square feet at approximately $360 a square foot gives you this $22,888,100. We also factored in that new building connector of 625 square feet that would be connected to your existing elementary building just from that safety and security perspective. And that was a $225,000 value. We also included the new greenhouse at 1,000 square feet for an additional $150,000. And then the last piece of this overall number is a new practice football field, which would be needed because we are feeding into that existing football field on the west side there of the proposed building. So the total all-in number, and this factors in everything we need to build. We're talking loose furnishings, everything when it comes from a building perspective. So your all-in number, $23,313,800. So 23 million.
So you may have noticed that some of our, that when Matt presented the proposed design, there were some other things that the district felt were big needs that maybe weren't addressed that I want to just kind of talk about real quick. One of them is, I met with Connie Brunswick, and everyone knows just how good our 5th and 6th grade plays have been in our high school drama. And so we got to a point where if we can't really do an auditorium that is large enough or a stage that is big enough to even accommodate our plays, then it's not worth doing. We don't want to build something, spend a lot of money on it, and then not use it. So, what they've done a great job of is using this 1988 gym for their performances. And so our Board of Education is definitely committed to, not within the levy, but within general funds, to put some money towards this with acoustical panels, lighting, sound, and different things to make it even a better experience. And we spent a lot of time with Connie, and it's been great. The football stadium restrooms is a big discussion topic that a lot of people have talked about. Actually, we got this idea from Cooch and Spider. They spent a lot of time in there trying to fix those restrooms during a big football game. But one option that we talked about was, does everybody know what I'm talking about? Like the booster building, it's like the pump house for the fire suppression systems. Like it's right across from the front entrance of the elementary, kind of sits by the football stadium. Maybe adding on to that, and maybe kind of doing some new restrooms off of that, and maintaining our current restrooms, but adding, so we'll kind of have restrooms on one side, restrooms on the other, maybe adding some concessions. splits concessions and different things like that, because really, if you noticed in that design that we proposed, there was no weight room like there was in 2018. The weight room is fine, we're just gonna do some renovations to it, and keep the restrooms there, but maybe add some on the other side of the pump house. We talked about before renovating the existing district office into academic classrooms. Like I said before, our district office is great, but somebody needs to be in that building as an administrator, buzzing people in when we have visitors at the door, just any kind of, discipline situations, you need somebody there. So we need to build district offices in this new facility, but then we'll take our existing and maybe turn them into 2 classrooms. The existing cafeteria, no big plans on that yet, but we're building a new cafeteria at the new facility and kitchen. We'll be able to repurpose those. Ideas have come up with, maybe keeping it in the small gymnasium thing that it is, just have a wide open space. Maybe turning it into a STEM classroom, more storage, whatever, you name it, and we'll kind of go through that when the time comes.
Wow, what a pretty intense, thorough process to get us this far. It always amazes me working with different schools. I'm lucky enough, I've been doing this long enough, I work with well over 100 school districts throughout the state of Ohio. Projects similar to this, smaller projects, refinances, whatever. It always amazes me how much time goes into planning, and how intense and thorough the process is. So hats off to the professional team, hats off to the administration, but most importantly, hats off to all of you community members who put a lot of long hours. I know all you have family and once become your family, a lot of long hours working on this. So thank you for that. What we talked about so far is the fun part, right? Everyone likes to plan for a new facility and plan for that and talk about all the fun, exciting things going on in the community. Now we got to talk about how we're going to finance it, how we're going to fund it. And I have some good news I want to share with you to start off. So you see this graph here. This is something we put together for a lot of my clients. So I do this dozens and dozens of times each year. And one thing to keep in mind, this shows your affordability of this school district. And this shows that the school district is very, very affordable compared to your neighboring districts. But before we get into these numbers, I want to point out, I work with schools throughout the state of Ohio. And this region of Ohio is very, very affordable. I'm from Central Ohio, Western. I live in one of the most expensive school districts in the state in terms of taxes. It always makes me jealous to come to a school like this, because the taxes are very low. This region is very, very low. If you look at Central Ohio, that region of Ohio, taxes are much, much higher. So this is something to be proud of. So looking at this, what this does is takes the average home value of $251,000 and the average taxable earned income of $98,000. And you take that Jane Smith, or that Joe Smith, you take their income, and you pick up their house, and you move to each one of these neighboring districts. This is the total amount of property tax and school district income tax that individual, that income, and that home value will pay. So you can see here, Marion Local School District is the second most affordable school district in the state of Ohio. Sorry, not in the state of Ohio, in this region. And that's very, very good. So this has very low taxes compared to the neighboring districts. If you go to the next slide, here it breaks out the cost for this specific project. And you can see the dollar amount for the project at the top, $23 million, some change. And the nice thing is, your school district's very financially healthy. Your treasurer does a great job. She manages the finances very strongly for your school district. Your school district, I did a big analysis on the credit worthiness of the school district, and your school district is very, very strong. It's very healthy. It's something to be proud of. Not only are affordable, it's also a very healthy school district financially. So because the school district is healthy, the school board has committed to put approximately $2 million into this project. because they want to share in part of this project. So they don't want to pass it all along to the community. They want to share. So we'll put $2 million of their own money into the project, pay for the project costs. And then, as a couple people pointed out, we are going to issue both property tax bonds and income tax bonds. We're going to issue about, let's call it $4.5 million of income tax bonds and about $16.8 million of property tax bonds. Through many conversations with the task force, we decided to not stretch it out to 37 years, but keep it similar to your home mortgage. You know, most of you have mortgages on your homes. Most of you are used to mortgaging your home for 30 years when you buy your home. So we're going to do the same thing for this school facility. We're going to mortgage the school facility, even though the school cannot pledge a mortgage. It's similar to the financing, 30 years for the financing. What it means in terms of income tax rate. We talked about several different income tax rates. 0.25%, 0.5%, 0.75%, or maybe no income tax at all. And we talked through all those options and figured out what do we think as a team. This is not Mike Burns or administration. As a community members, your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, serve on the task force, they're the ones that decided that we think is best for the community to ask for a 0.25% income tax. And then finance the rest of it with millage, bond millage, which is associated with the property tax side of the bondage. So we're going to ask for a 0.25% income tax and a 7.42 mil property tax. In terms of your income tax, for the average income in this school district, it's about $98,000. That would equate to about $246 for the average income tax person that runs out much money during the year. And then for the voted bond millage, 7.42 mils on a $100,000 home equates to about $250 a year. Next slide. One thing to keep in mind, though I said $100,000 home, there's not many $100,000 homes in this community. I understand that this is a really wealthy school district. Your home value is a nice home value, you have a lot of farms. What we advise you to do and suggest that we do, when you try to figure out what's it truly going to cost you as a taxpayer, you should go to your county auditor website. It's actually a very nice website. Mercer County has a nice website. That's what this is right here. But Aubervilles and Dark County, of which some of you may live in, they also have a similar website, and you can find their link online very easily. But the way you look up your home value, it's not what your neighbors sold your home for, it's not what you think you can sell your home for. The value you got to look at is what value do they show on an appraised value basis on the county auditor website. And the way you do that is there's a link, and we'll hand this out later if you want to pick it up, please do. There's a link, you click on the link, and then it's pretty straightforward. You type in the owner name or you type in your address, and then you hit search, and you go to the next page. The next page will pop up. Step 2 is click on the 2023, and you see the circle there. Under property tax cards, and again, it's pretty easy to find. The page looks exactly like this. So just click on 2023, and that takes you to the next page. Then here's the key. When you look up the value of your home, for those of you who don't know, you want to see what the appraised value per the county auditor says it is. So for a residential property, look at the appraised value, total, as you see circled there in the middle. And if you're a farmer, you want to look up the CAUV appraised value, as you can see there. So those pages will pop up automatically once you type your name in, hit search, click up the 2023 tax year, or you write the year, and you want to write down these values, whatever the appraised value is, total appraised value, and then you plug it in on the next page. You have a tax estimator on the website. And the first box there was says $118,000, the first box on the left. That's where you type in your appraised value that you have on the previous page. And then the other yellow box, you type in the millage rate. And for us, the proposed financing structure as of now, you type in 7.42 mils. And and then we'll automatically calculate the additional new taxes for the property tax payment. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. It's pretty straightforward. Once you see the website, you can kind of walk through the steps. I think you can kind of follow that. If not, please reach out to the school or one of your community task force members or myself, and we're happy to help you. And then in terms of your income tax, it's a 40% income tax based on earned income only. So that does not include investment earnings, does not include dividends, does not include unemployment. And anything that's not earned, it doesn't count towards. So it's only your earned income tax, which is salary, tips, wages, etc. Whatever that dollar amount is, times it by 0.25%, and that will be your income tax cost per month. So with that, I'm going to be here the rest of the night, so if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But go to the next picture, you see the valid time frame. Like I said, we've been putting a lot of time in, and I say we are really the community task force and the school district, as well as Arnold Miller. And we're trying our best to answer as many questions as we can to get a game plan going forward. As the superintendent pointed out, all this information is just proposed. We haven't made any decisions yet. But this is what we believe, based on the feedback that we got, is the best financing, the best funding options for your school district. So we're interested to hear what the feedback may be. But we do have some timing deadlines. We need to make decisions. The school board has to be able to pass the appropriate resolutions based on the feedback that it receives by June, with the final ballot language in place by July 10th, and then we'd be on the November ballot. So those are kind of the deadlines in terms of moving forward. I think from our side, we're pretty darn close. We're just looking for feedback from the community to make sure we're going down the right path. But I think we're in a great spot to hit those deadlines, assuming we get the feedback. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Pat.
All right, and so just real quickly to kind of finalize as far as the design and construction goes, assuming this would be on the bond issue here in November, we look to get started probably sometime in January of 2024. The extent of this building design would take anywhere from 8 to 12 months, depending on the final option. So we're just kind of being conservative and saying that would be through the end of 2024. And then construction would likely go from early 2025 through 2026 with an opening occupancy of the new building and ready for the 2026 to 2027 school year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Doug, and he's going to wrap it up here.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Did we get the wireless mic going? If not, we're at that point with Q&A. So I was going to run around with the microphone tonight. So if this is what we have to answer, just speak loudly enough. No, still dead? Okay. Yes. All right, thank you. Task force meeting, we already mentioned that at the top. We'll come back in April after tonight. We'll consider developing the board recommendation that we just talked about. And then the Board of Education meeting in June 2023. The task force is going to be
Audio visual experts will be
I thought all we do was cut. Okay, all right, thanks for the reminder of the next step. So now I believe, what questions do you have? Mine, or jump in?
real quick. The plan would be to have, potentially, as long as the camera is working, to post this recording of tonight's meeting. Maybe I can link it, or Michelle, not sure, to the website. And then also I'm going to try to get this presentation, like right now, the community meeting from October I'll try to get this one on the website. Plus, here at the end of the meeting, I have a handout. So a lot of you are probably listening to Michael Burns saying, oh, I gotta try to remember all those steps to get to the tax estimator. I have a handout, a lot of handouts that, we maybe hand out one per family. And I will also try to post that on the website for you to go on our homepage and find that. So hopefully that answers a lot of those questions.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. How am I? Okay back there? Okay, a little bit of an echo. Also, the matrix that Matt showed, we know that was very hard to read, but the purpose of posting to a website so you can use that as a resource. So if you had trouble reading it tonight, when it is posted, it'll be a little easier for you. Okay, I think you guys will be doing most of the answering, so I'm going to walk around a little bit. Anyone? Maybe you guys can help me if we need some runners. Yeah, we got a question up here.
I talk pretty loud.
Okay, sure.
So my question, I know the classrooms was the number one concern. I'm curious of how many classrooms are being added in the new building. Does it really show that on the diagram? And how does that, for the years to come, versus Band-Aids?
So the task force did a great job of asking a lot of those same questions. We originally, started out with 8, and then I think it was the final task force meeting or the second last one. After a lot of conversation, we did some touring, spent a lot of time with Mr. Wilker and Mrs. Bruns, who sort of mapped it all out and said, we're going to go with 9. And that will help because eventually, we know that this is a 7th and 8th grade building that was proposed. And when you have 101 kindergartners, and what we're projecting coming up here in another couple of years is pretty high, they'll eventually get to 7th and 8th grade, so we wanted to be prepared. So to answer your question.
With 2 additional career tech.
Yeah, and then plus their career tech. Just to make sure everyone understands, we used to have industrial arts and ag education. When Mr. Bailey resigned, let's face it, you just can't find industrial arts teachers anymore. And it was definitely the time to become a 2 ag teacher program. And so we did that, but we still have a lot of our industrial arts, and we know how much this community values CAD and drafting and doing those things for a lot of our future mechanical engineers. So we kept the program very similar, but we are a 2 ag teacher program. Yes?
You also had the administrative offices that we become 2 more last year.
Correct. As Mr. Hardesty just said, we have and then 2 additional classrooms. So we have 9 in the new proposed design, but we have like my office area, the central office area, being made into 2 classrooms, so we'll gain 2 there also. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, looks like we have one up here.
Yeah, Mike. When they're about 10 years from now, when they all hit high school, are we going to be back in the same thing looking for another building, or are they all going to fit into high school?
So you're asking
Repeat the question.
when the
Repeat the question.
okay. So the question was 10 years from now, when these large number of students are all in high school, are they going to fit and be in there? Well, what we're finding out with high school is you have students attending TriStar, you have students attending College Credit Plus, Mr. Goodwin. You have a lot of just different varying things, and high school students don't take as much space as elementary students, just with all the teaching things. So, yeah, plus we'll be gaining some space with career tech being in that new facility. So it appears we should be all right.
So Mike, if I understand you correctly, the career tech that you're referring to is just going to be the industrial arts and the VOAG programs that we already have. You're not going to add any more programs?
No, these are not added programs. These are like, if If you go down to our wood and metal shop in our drafting classroom, plus for those of you like maybe around my age or even older, you remember the home ec room, that's where the current ag is. Those will be moved out, those programs completely moved out to the new facility, so that will free up those spaces.
So you're adding 9 classrooms. How many coaches' offices are you adding? Because if you go back to the slide, it looks like it's about even number of classrooms to coaching offices. If you look at the red and blue on the slide.
Those were locker rooms.
Can you go back to
With,
the slide?
with coaches'
yes,
offices included. There are 4 locker rooms, so 4 coaches' offices within those locker rooms.
Can you go back to that slide? So we can do it?
Yeah, if somebody had the clicker.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Do you have a specific question on like what coaches' offices are used for?
No, I was just trying to remember exactly how it was. It's hard to see.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, so there's 2 down here on each end of the gymnasium, and then there's another 2 that are built into this larger rectangle over to the right-hand side. And those 2 locker rooms over there are going to be large enough for the football program as well in those 2.
Mike, you have 2 on the side that's designated as special education, so that leaves us with 7 simple classrooms, is that correct?
1 science, 1 special education, and 7 regular.
So for like example, class 34 is going to currently require 6 classrooms. So is the plan going to be that they're going to go down to, they're going to have more students, higher student-teacher ratio, or there's not?
You're saying when they get to high school, will there be a higher?
When they get to middle school, so the class of 34 currently takes 5 classrooms. And if there's only 7 typical classrooms in this, right? So you have 1 per science lab, 1 special education, correct? So you're only going to have, you're either going to have to up your student-teacher ratio, or you're unable to fit 2 grades in the school.
Yeah, so typically, since I've been here and even before me, the Board of Education has had a philosophy on very low student-teacher ratio, K3, maybe even at times a little bit lower K2. So, you know, once they get up a little bit older in age, our philosophy has always been sort of, it's okay to increase that student-teacher ratio. So yes, that is the point.
Hey, Mike, 40 years ago, we had this same census. We graduated 100 in our class. You didn't have near the amount of facilities that you have now. So you think you just need to do a better job of managing the space you have?
Okay, so I think the question was, like, in 1982, that was the largest graduating class ever as 100. So years ago, like maybe in the 70s and 80s, we had large enrollment like that. So the question was, can't we just do a better job of utilizing space because we're comparable to them? So to answer that question is, the original elementary was built in '66. There was an addition in '78, but also at that same time, students were still going to St. John's for elementary, Chickasaw, was there some in Osgood? So we had a lot. And we talked about this with the task force. I mean, that's a great question because that has come up a lot. Education and then the special ed programs that are involved, you know, things have really changed, and just keeping a lower student-teacher ratio. So when you combine all those, yeah, it's just things have changed. So that's why there's more spaces needed.
You've added on a lot since 1978.
Double that. How many preschool classrooms?
Yeah, you know, we house like 2 preschools. Trying to think of anything else.
point out too that we have, it's not just one large grade where they can accommodate space with the smaller grades above and below where they can accommodate classrooms that way. We have consistent high enrollment following each other in each grade. So that's where the problems are rising, where in the past, yes, they've had grades that go through that are 90s, maybe 100, but typically the grades above and below were smaller so that they could accommodate the classrooms in that way. So where we're seeing is the trend of consistent grades being of the higher enrollment numbers.
They've also changed the way that the teachers are teaching these younger students as well. Instead of having kids space desk, and teachers up at the board teaching, there's a lot more small group activities you physically cannot fit in the desk like it used to be. You have a lot more little tables and teacher doing 1 and 4 kids at a time, and you just can't get the desk in there like it used to be done.
I guess, Mike, you might want to say what you guys are projected the classrooms. You guys never said, you know what I mean? I know it was like, per se, 140 possibly. I mean, maybe some people don't know what we actually are projecting.
Yeah, I'm going to hand that off to Phil Miller because he has done a great job in our projections.
You know, the key is, first of all, the class sizes in the 70s were very, very large. There's a class of 100. There's a class of, my son is in first grade, there's a class of 101. We have slides in the back of, there's a couple of slides to show that, so next year, 86, Nick, is that still the number? The following year, so the preschoolers now, that are going to kindergarten, are 86. Can you go back a couple? The following year, by the way, you see the class size being only around 80. That's the expectation for the following year. And then the next 2 years after that, can I just flip it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
No, you can use those. I was just trying to get us to
So these are the actual numbers. So first of all, there are 8 years where we can correlate the baptism numbers to the enrollment because we have historical baptisms that go far enough back to correlate 5 years later if they were enrolled in kindergarten. So 8 years of data that say, okay, what's that trend or that correlation? And these are actual numbers. In yellow, that is the baptism numbers. In blue is the correlating year of enrollment numbers. So in general, they're around 15 to 25 more kids enrolled than there are baptisms. Okay, in general. I'm not sitting here to say this is with 99% accuracy or anything like that. That's just what 8 years of data has told us. So you can see, this is a different way to look at it. In the blue is actual enrollment. In the green is the correlating baptism numbers that led to that. So you can see the trend of where it's going moving forward. And then here's the long term. So you can talk back in the 70s. There was a class of 100. There were some earlier 70s large class sizes during that time, by the way. Some of my fellow board members were taking classes in Raystein and other places. A key metric isn't just the class size, but the enrollment of K-8 in the entire building. So one class of 100 isn't going to change. You know, if we had one class of 100, as I think Kaylee said, we wouldn't need more classrooms. But 3 years ago, we had 600 kids K through 8. This year, 2020, I don't know which one it is, but 2022, we have like 660-ish in K through 8. In a couple of years from now, we'll have in the 800 range. When, again, not next year's class hits, but 3 kindergarten classes from now, those next 2 years, there were 90 and 110 baptisms in those 2 years. And then the following year, exactly. So there's some, again, it's not one class, but the consistency includes the total K-8 enrollment and the number of kids we need to fit in classrooms. And we can compare the 70s. The bottom line, in my opinion, is we have to decide if we want 20 kids per class, or 22, or 25,
classrooms. Two classrooms that we rent out to a private preschool and to the Mercer County ESC.
Correct.
And we also have how many students does Marion have that's currently open enrolled that comes in from other districts that won't be paying the school district tax currently?
Okay, so the question was, how many preschool classrooms do we rent out, and then how many open enrolled students do we have? To answer your question is, we rent out 2 classrooms, one to Chapel Hill Preschool, which is a private preschool, kind of funded through MCDO. And then we have the county preschool unit that is sort of publicly funded, but they're not Marion local. It's run through the Mercer County ESC that we house. And predominantly, these are all our students from our community. So that does take up 2 classrooms. So can I project that maybe where your question is leaning is if they are displaced, we could gain 2 classrooms? So that would be the question. But we made a commitment that we've talked about this with the board, and we are 100% committed to our preschool because there are future students, and for busing purposes and transportation, for accommodating all of you as families and parents, that we are committed to keeping those 2 preschools housed at Marion Local.
But it doesn't service all of the community that those preschools know.
Correct.
And now areas are having a hard time finding places for their kids to go to preschool.
So just to make it compare, so you're saying, and that doesn't house all of the students that need preschool, because then we have daycare Discoveries also. And they just had a big expansion, and I heard they're pretty full too, which is a great problem to have. But no, and so we don't want to compound the problem by displacing those 2 preschools and making it even more difficult for you as parents. And then the second part of the question was about open enrollment. How many students do we have? So we bring in about 75, and Amy just looked up some of this, 75 incoming open enrolled students, a lot from Montezuma and Sprinkling, because you have to be a bordering district to Marion Local to be eligible for open enrollment. And then open enrollment out of the district, plus homeschool, plus things like that, 25. So we have a net of 50 incoming students. Now, those are dispersed throughout K through 12. So I know at the last community meeting, it was sort of asked, well, if we got rid of open enrollment, would that help us not have to maybe build so many classrooms and not have to do anything at all? And it would. And plus, speaking on behalf of the Board of Education, they, once again, like I said, the preschool, they are 100% committed to open enrollment. It's been very positive, and it would be really hard to just cut it off now because we have students dispersed through kindergarten through 12th grade, and some of those open enrolled families are now wanting to have younger siblings that want. They don't want to split between 2 districts. And just to kind of touch base, those particular families are not paying the taxes, but the funding does follow the child. And so we are getting funding from the district they come from to educate them, if that answers the question. Yes. Yes.
So can you clarify when you have to do renovations to the existing building, how that's going to be funded? And also making sure that we have enough funding for teachers, because we want to improve the class student ratio or teacher student ratio.
So the question was, if we have to renovate some of our existing classrooms in our current elementary building, how will that be funded? And will there still be enough funds to, we'll have to hire extra teachers with the increased enrollment. So, yes, we will, we factored that all in. The Board of Education, once again, is committed to using general fund dollars to pay for the renovations separate from that levy. And then already, Mr. Wilker, you're starting interviews here real soon for some additional staff that we have for next school year already. And so we are able to fit that within our current budget. Yes?
So, piggybacking on that, you kind of mentioned the last meeting, roof repair,
I'm sorry, what was it?
So like the last meeting, you said that the roofs need repair, is that all being taken care of through the general fund as well?
Yes, so there are different funds within Marion Local's budget. You have the general fund, and then you have permanent improvement money, and that can be used for any kind of improvement that's going to last 5 years or longer. So the question was, well then, at the last meeting, we talked about the high school roof needing some repair, and different things. So will that be able to be absorbed through the general budget or permanent improvement money? And the answer is yes. That's why when the Board of Education talked to Amy Reineke and said, okay, how do you feel about committing $2 million towards this project? Does that leave enough for fixing the roof, the HVAC system, doing a lot of those things, and we do feel comfortable.
So the general fund is paying for the improvements to existing schools, is that correct?
You're saying the slide that I presented back in your presentation?
And that's coming out of the general fund?
Or PI fund.
Okay,
one of the others.
how much cash is on hand in general fund?
$7.5 million.
7.5%.
The question was how much money is on hand from the general fund.
Hey, Mike, take two more.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. I think right up here I got some.
You guys have areas for future expansion. How long do you estimate before we're going to have to start digging into the future expansions for the next phase of this?
That's a great question.
How long is this going to be working?
Well, I'm sorry, Matt.
I'm just saying, it's all going to be based on enrollment, but also factoring in some of the existing facilities and just the timing of all that, so.
Yeah, the timing, so I think what's going to have to happen is we're going to have to start looking at the continuing maintenance and the lifespan of these buildings. And then also where, if this levy were to pass, where we're at with the payment on that, and just everything else, the enrollment, did all of a sudden the enrollment never stop? And, was it cyclical or did it just keep going and going? So there's a lot of factors. But yeah, that's just hard to answer right now. But what we wanted to show the whole entire community is that we did think of that and to show where what the vision was for expanding from that viewpoint. Brad?
Part of that general fund topic, I think maybe some of you aren't aware that HVAC system, I picked up some tickets one day, and I think 40% of the windows were open on a 40-degree day. So that's kind of a little bit of elephant in the room on that topic. I'm sure you guys are well aware of that, but when the high school parents ask their kids, yeah, we open up the windows all the time. That's literally money out the window.
Well, then I'm not sure where Pooch is. I think he's here, but Kevin and I right now are working with Weigel. Our system is outdated and our the technology in it. So we are in the process. We're still waiting on those edge controllers from Weigel, but Pooch and Spider and I are in the process of changing over those controls because Spider and I just had a technology in it, it's hard to read. And so we are in the process of upgrading all those. It's an ongoing problem. Yes, Lord.
I got a question. So, just like in regards to that new gym, and you said like it has a lot of seating, would that be something like was it ever thought? And I don't know, maybe it wasn't just wondering, like that gym size of the new gym, Cozy Gym, compared to this gym, the size difference, and was it maybe should we like could we flip and do like a K through even fifth grade in here, make this be the whole gym, and make that into a nice new gym and kind of put the ag and tech and high school and the junior high over there?
Okay, so I think there are multiple parts to your question, I think. So yes, the task force had lots of scenarios. It was, do we make it a new junior high gym and keep this as our high school gym and just make that a junior high gym because that's what the 7th grade periods are going to be? Do we do no gym at all? Do we make it a 3-court gym, a 2-court gym, all those things? So to answer your one question.
I guess what I'm saying is like this gym is small for a high school now, I think, and I think that the grade's growing, we're going to need a bigger gym in the future.
Yes.
Are we going to throw more money towards that gym and make that a high school gym?
And that is in the plan. Yeah, the plan that was presented is a high school competition gym that would seat roughly 2,000. Just to give you an idea, this gym seats around 1,700, with the student section bleachers. But I think the spacing, the ADA compliant in the bleachers in the new one would make it a little more spacious. But the plans, which can all be changed by Garmin Miller, but in the initial design plan that was presented to the task force was around 2,000. And that would be, and then junior high games would be planned to be moved here. If you want to close the board.
Thanks, everybody. I know there were some questions we didn't get to. That's why we have exit tickets. That's why we want every bit of feedback we can get. Because it's hard to answer these. We could be here till 11 o'clock at night. So if you allow me just for 1 second to do a quick housekeeping and close this meeting, I'd appreciate it. Motion, item 2319. Could I get a motion to adjourn the meeting, please? Tim Coleman. Second by Jesse Rose.
Mr. Bruns?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman?
Yes.
Mr. Mueller?
Yes.
Mr. Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.